Kayla Thompson sat by her bedroom window, watching the pale morning light stretch across the blue hills of Roanoke, Virginia. The town was still, as if holding its breath. Birds chirped softly in the distance, but inside the Thompson household, the silence was heavier than stone. Her mother, Margaret, moved through the house like a ghost. Polite words, fake smiles. Her father, Douglas, barely spoke except to criticize. And her younger brother, Tyler, had learned early that silence meant safety. Kayla, now 24, had grown up in this tense quiet. It was a home where love was conditional, where praise was rare, and where Kayla's own feelings were always pushed aside. She was the peacekeeper, the fixer, the one who smoothed over the cracks just so everything wouldn't fall apart. But something had started to change. It began with a missed family dinner. Kayla had stayed late at work, helping a colleague with a project. When she got home, her father's voice cut through the walls. "Do you even care about this family anymore?" Kayla had stood there, coat still on, eyes burning. She didn't answer. And that silence, her silence, was louder than any shout. From that day, something inside her had shifted. She began to question the things she had accepted for so long. The way her mother blamed her for her brother's mistakes. The way her father acted like her presence was an inconvenience. The way no one ever asked how she felt. And the worst part was, none of them saw it as wrong. It was just how things were. But Kayla was tired. Tired of apologizing for things she didn't do. Tired of pretending she was fine. Tired of being the emotional punch bag for a family who never noticed when she bled inside. One evening, as twilight crept over the hills, Kayla took a walk through Asina Park. The air was cool, the river steady beside her. She sat on a bench near the old train bridge and whispered to herself, "I don't owe them my silence." It was the first time she had said it out loud. Her voice trembled, but it was real. And for the first time in years, she felt like she was listening to herself. Back at home, the tension remained. But Kayla had begun something that could not be undone. Not a fight, not revenge, but a quiet refusal. She would no longer carry their pain for them. The next morning, Kayla woke to the clatter of dishes downstairs. The sharp tone in her mother's voice was unmistakable, even through the walls. "If you're going to act like this, Kayla, don't expect anyone to cater to you." It was always the same, demand disguised as concern. Kayla sat on the edge of her bed, letting the weight of the words pass over her like waves. She no longer responded. Not because she didn't feel anything, but because she was done offering explanations that were never heard. Downstairs, she moved silently. Coffee. Toast. Then back upstairs before the next jab could find her. At work, things were different. Her colleague, James, noticed her distance. "You okay? You've been quiet lately." Kayla gave him a polite smile. "Just tired." But it wasn't just fatigue. It was the realization that silence had become her only form of resistance. Later that evening, she found an old notebook in her drawer. Flipping through it, she saw pages filled with poetry, ideas, dreams, things she had written in college before life at home had pulled her back. Before she buried her voice under everyone else's noise. She sat on the floor, letting the words wash over her like a forgotten song. And in that moment, she remembered who she was before she became the buffer for everyone else's storm. She picked up a pen, and she began to write again. The days that followed were quieter, but different. Kayla no longer rushed to please. She stopped explaining why she was late. She no longer said yes to everything. And for the first time in years, she said no. It was subtle at first. When her mother asked her to cancel her weekend plans for a last-minute family lunch, Kayla replied, "I already have something important." No apology, no guilt, just truth. Her mother's eyes narrowed. "More important than your family?" Kayla didn't flinch. "More important than being treated like I don't matter." The room fell silent. It was the first spark of something new, honesty without fear. That night, she wrote for hours. Memories she had buried. Arguments she had swallowed. Dreams she had silenced. The pages welcomed them all. She was no longer writing to be understood. She was writing to understand herself. As weeks passed, the tension in the house became more apparent. Her father barely looked at her. Her mother oscillated between passive-aggressive remarks and cold indifference. Tyler kept his head down, caught in the middle. But Kayla? She felt stronger. She started spending weekends away, exploring nearby towns, visiting bookstores in Charlottesville, hiking through the Blue Ridge trails. Each trip was a quiet declaration. I exist beyond this house. Her family called it selfish. Kayla called it survival. In a cafe in Lexington, she met a woman named Lena, who was reading a book Kayla had loved in university. They talked for hours. For the first time, someone listened to her stories without judgment or comparison. Lena smiled. You have a way with words. Kayla laughed softly. I'm just starting to find them again. At home, resistance grew. Her parents accused her of changing, of becoming distant. But Kayla refused to shrink again. One evening, Douglas raised his voice. You think you're better than us now? With your writing and your weekends away? Kayla stood still.
Calm.
Measured.
No.
I just don't think I deserve to be less. He stared at her, stunned. That night, Kayla locked her door, not out of fear, but choice. She lit a candle, opened her notebook, and wrote. They don't have to understand. I'm not doing this for them. It was not about rebellion. It was about reclamation. Her relationship with Tyler remained delicate. He didn't say much, but one evening, as Kayla packed a bag for another short trip, he stood at her doorway. They say you've changed. Kayla looked up. Maybe. But I think I'm finally becoming myself. Tyler nodded slowly. I hope I get to do that someday. It was a small moment. A thread of truth between siblings. Kayla didn't push. She just smiled. She left the house that night without saying goodbye to her parents. Not in anger. Simply because they never asked her to stay. Kayla found a small apartment in a quiet corner of town, surrounded by maple trees and silence she chose. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She painted the walls. She stacked her books by the window. She turned her old notebook into a manuscript. She cried sometimes. Healing was not linear. Some nights, she still heard their voices in her head, questioning her worth.
But now, she answered back.
She filled her home with plants, music, and laughter from new friends. She wrote at dawn, walked in the afternoon, and watched sunsets without needing anyone's permission. Her silence was no longer a prison. It had become her sanctuary. One rainy evening, Kayla wrote a letter to her mother, then one to her father, then one to Tyler. She wrote things she never said out loud, not out of bitterness, but because she had words now, and she needed to let them out. She never mailed the letters. She tucked them into the back of her journal. It was not about them anymore. It was about her. And that was enough. Months later, her mother called. Your father's in the hospital. Come home. Kayla paused. The old guilt stirred. The instinct to rush, to fix, to appease. But then she remembered all the times they didn't show up for her. She went. Not for them. For closure. At the hospital, she stood beside a man who barely recognized the woman she had become.
He tried to speak.
She nodded. But she didn't stay long. She had made peace with the past. She left before the weight of old expectations could anchor her again. Kayla stood on the overlook of Mill Mountain, watching the city of Roanoke sparkle below. She had survived. Not just the home, the silence, the judgment. She had survived herself, the version of her that believed she had to earn love by suffering quietly. She smiled, the breeze catching her hair. She no longer needed validation from people who only knew how to love her when she stayed small. She wasn't angry. She was free. And that was the story. The story of what happened when she refused to be her family's punching bag.